Fractions, decimals, and percentages is what we're going to look at in this video. It's split into 6 parts. So we're going to start off by looking at converting a percentage to a fraction, and then a percentage to a decimal, and then we're going to move on to decimal to a percentage, and then decimal to a fraction, and then finally we're going to wrap up with fraction to a decimal and fraction to a percentage. So the way my videos work, I'm going to do the example on the left, which is I do. You are then going to press pause and have a go at the example on the right, which is you do. And at the bottom of the slide, you've got the type of example this is. So how do you convert 70% to a fraction? Now the percent just means out of 100. So all you have to do is write 70 out of 100, and that is your fraction. Now you can simplify this, so that can both be divided by 10, and that gives you 7 out of 10. So again, hopefully you've pressed pause and had a go. So again, the percent symbol just means out of 100. Now you can simplify this, divide the top by 2. So that would give you 42. Divide the bottom by 2. We can half that because they're both even. Again, we can half them. They're both even numbers. And that is it, fully simplified. So moving on, exact same thing here. Percent just means out of 100. Can we simplify it? Yes, we can. Half them, and then we can divide them both by 2. There we go. So again, hopefully you've pressed pause and now we go like this. So 9 out of 100, that can't be simplified, so we can leave it there. Now with this one, exact same rule, yeah? So percent just means out of 100. Awesome. Now you don't want to leave a decimal in a fraction, right? So you can get rid of that decimal. How do you get rid of it? Well, I can times the top by 10, because that will just hop the decimal there. And I'll have to do the same at the bottom. So that gives me 50 out of 1,000. No, not 50, sorry. 5 out of 1,000. And that's the decimal gone. Now, can we simplify it? Yes, we can, because I can divide them both by the 5 times table. So that would then become 1 out of 200 as the final answer. So again, the one on the right, exact same thing. Percent just means out of 100. We're going to get rid of the decimal. So this time to get rid of the decimal, you have to hop twice. So which means we're going to times the top and bottom by 100. That then becomes 35 out of 1,000. Now, can 35 out of 1,000 be simplified? Yes, it can, because they both go, I say 1,000, what I really mean is 10,000. They both go into the 5 times table. So that then becomes 7 out of 2,000. So moving on, again, exact same rule, yeah? 0.08, you can divide that by 100, get rid of the decimal, so times the top by 100, bottom by 100, which adds 2 more zeros on, so that leaves me with 8 over 10,000. Now I can just half them both, which gives me 4 over 5,000, and I can half them both again, which then ends up with the final answer of 1250. So again, hopefully you've pressed pause and had a go at this. So the percent symbol just means out of 100. To get rid of the decimal, we hop 1, 2, 3, so we times the top and bottom by 1,000 this time. So that is 3, and add 3 zeros on here. And that is it. That's the answer in its simplest form. So here's some practice questions for you to have a go at. Press pause and have a go. Here are the answers. Now moving on, we're now looking at how do you convert a percentage to a decimal. Now to do that, all you do is divide it by 100. So with 70, there's going to be a decimal there. We just hop that twice. So the answer here becomes 0.7. Again here, we have a decimal right at the end there. We hop it twice. So we divide it by 100. That gives us 0.63. Moving on, exact same thing here. The decimal's there. We hop 1, 2. So the decimal's now here. Okay, so the answer becomes 0.04. Again, the decimal is now here. We hop twice because we divided by 100. And the answer here is 0.09. Again, exact same thing here. The decimal is here. We hop 1. Oops, let me just change that. We hop twice. 1, 2. The decimal ends up there. So the final answer is 0.005. And again, exact same thing here. Hop twice. The decimal ends up there. So the final answer is 0.002. Moving on, exact same thing here. Hop twice. 0.003. And again, exact same thing here. Hop there, 0 there, and there. So that's 0.0008 as a decimal. Again, here's some practice questions. Press pause and have a go. Here are the answers. Now, moving on, well, how do you convert a decimal to a percentage? So you just do the opposite. So before we were dividing by 100, so you just times it by 100. So if I times this by 100, I hop the decimal twice, so that's 1, 2. So that gives me an answer of 60%. And again, on the right, we just times it by 100. So that becomes 72% because we hop the decimal twice. Again, hop the decimal twice, basically multiplied by 100. That gives us 7%. Again, hopefully you've pressed pause and had a go at this. That gives you 3%. And again, same with this one. Hop the decimal twice, so the decimal ends up there. Again, hopefully you've pressed pause and had a go. So hop the decimal twice, and that is 0.82%. So here's some practice questions. Press pause and have a go. Here are the answers. Now moving on, well, how do you convert a decimal to a fraction? So in order to do this, all you do is you copy the numbers after the decimal, so that's a 6, and then you count how many digits there are after the decimal. There's just one digit, which means there's just going to be 1 0 in the denominator. Okay, and now can we simplify this? Yes, we can. They both go into the 2 times table, so that becomes 3/5. And again, on the right, same thing. Copy the numbers after the decimal, and then count how many digits there are after decimal. There's 2. That's 100. Now, can this be simplified? Yes, it can, because they're both even numbers. So I can half this. That's 36. Half that. That gives me 50. Again, they're both still even numbers. So that can come down to 18 out of 25. So again, the exact same thing here. Copy the numbers after the decimal. So there's just a 7 now. And how many digits are there after the decimal? 2. So that's 7 out of 100. And again, exact same thing here. Copy the digits after the decimal. And then how many zeros do you have? Well, you just count the digits after the decimal. That is all. So moving on, exact same thing here. 63. This time there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have 4 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. Okay. And again, hopefully you've pressed pause and had a go. 1, 2, 3. So we have 3 zeros. And that is the fraction there. So again, press pause and have a go. Here are the answers. Now, moving on, we have convert the following to a decimal. So in order to convert this to a decimal, that's just saying, well, actually, can you divide 60 by 100? Yeah, when you divide 60 by 100, you can just read this question as this really. Well, what happens when you divide something by 100? You just hop the decimals twice. So we have 60, the decimal's there, we hop the decimal twice, the answer is 0.6. You can leave it as 0.60 if you want, but you can just put 0.6. Again here, we just hop the decimal twice because we're dividing by 100. Now moving on, here it's different. We're dividing by 10, which means we just hop the decimal once. And again, here, we're just dividing by 10, so we just hop the decimal once. Now here it's a little bit different. We don't have a 10, so we can't just hop the decimal. So in order to solve this, we use the bus stop method. So we have 5 outside, 2 inside. Does 5 go into 2? No, it doesn't. We use a decimal. That brings a 0 in. We carry the 2 over. So now does 5 go into 20? Yes, it does. It goes into 24 times with no remainder. So the answer here is 0.4. Now, we've got 1 on the right. Hopefully you've pressed pause now to go. We use the bus stop method. 8 here, 3 here. 8 doesn't go into 3. So we bring the decimal in. Now we have 30, and we can carry the 3 up. So we have 8, 16, 24. So that is times 3. That leaves me the remainder of 6. And we can put the 0 there. So we have 60, and then we have times 7 gives us 56, which then gives us a 4. And we have 40. 40 goes into 8 5 times. So the answer is 0.375. Okay, so with these ones, you have to use the bus stop method. Moving on. So these are slightly different answers you get here. So these will give you recurring numbers. So if I put a 6 here and a 1 here, put a decimal in. So that's 10. 6 goes into 10 once with a remainder of 4. Again, put a 40 there. So that will be 6, that gives us 36 with the remainder of 4, and you can see it just keeps going. Okay, and we can write this answer as 0.1666, and you can write it as recurring with this dot on top. All that dot means is that 6 is recurring, because this is just going to carry on. It's never going to stop. So again, hopefully you've pressed pause and had a go at the example on the right. So again, this gives you a recurring answer as well. So that goes into 10 sort of once, leaves you the remainder of 1, which again is a 1, which leaves you with 10, and then that just carries on forever, and then you can just write the answer as 0.1 with a dot at the top, and the dot just means it's recurring. So moving on, now with these ones, you can be a little bit clever, and what I mean by clever is you can see with the 50, if I times it by 2, that becomes 100, so I'll times the top by 2 as well, and that becomes 84, and immediately you can see the answer is going to be 0.84, because if you divide by 100 or 10, you know you just have to hop the decimals. So if you can make your life easier, you can try to do that. So for example here, again, you can use the bus stop method if you want, but you can make your life easier. If I just times this by 4 and this by 4, you really want to be looking at the number at the bottom. Can I get to 100 quite easily? Yes, I can. And there we go, answer solved. You just hop the decimal twice, okay? So that's just a little tip there. So here's some practice questions. Press pause and have a go. Here are the answers. Now moving on, how do you go from a fraction to a percentage? So in this case, remember, the word percent just means out of 100. So this is already out of 100. So that's 60%. Again, the word percent just means out of 100. They've already written this out of 100 for us. So that's that done. Now with this, it's not out of 100, but I can quite easily fix that. If I times the bottom by 10, I have to do the same to the top, yeah? So that's now 90 out of 100. That's 90%. Again, here, can I write this out of 100? Because it'll just make my life easier. Yes, I can. If I times the top and bottom by 10, that gives you 70%. So moving on. Now, can I write this out of 100? Now, you could look at it and say, well, actually, I can write this out of 100 if I times the top and bottom by 20. But with this one, what I want to use is a different method. So what we did earlier is we used the bus stop method, and we had the 5 and the 2, and we ended up with an answer of 0.4. So what you first want to do is write a question like this as a decimal, and then to convert a decimal to a percentage, you just times it by 100. So the answer here is 40%. So for example, the one in the UDO side, now you can't really go from 80 to 100 because it'll be quite an awkward decimal to use. So what I would recommend is that you use the bus stop method like we did earlier, and you figure out, well, what is 3 divided by 80 as a decimal, and you get your answer as 0.375, and now convert this to a percentage. That's a lot easier. All you do is multiply that by 100. Okay, so there's a two-step process here. We're first going to a decimal and then a percentage because it makes our life easier. So moving on, again, I've already answered these previously, so we know how to convert this to a decimal using the bus stop method. So 1 out of 6 gave us a recurring answer of 0.16666. Now to write this as a percentage, I just times it by 100. Or you can just write that with a little dot at the top and the percent symbol. So again, with the one on the right, we know that the answer, because we solved this previously as a decimal, is this. The question is asking for percentage, so we can just times the decimal by 100 to get the percentage. So in this case, we are doing 2 steps to get the final answer. And again, this is coming back to that same point about trying to be a little bit smart. So, percentages out of 100, I can immediately see if I just times this by 2, that's 100, and that's my answer immediately. And again, with this one, if I times this by 4, I get 24 out of 100, and straight away I get my answer. So if you can go to 100, you will just make your life a lot easier. But you can't always do that. If the number is 7 in the denominator, you can't quite go to 100. In that case, you want to first go to a decimal. And then once you've got the decimal, just times the decimal by 100 and get the percentage. It's a lot easier to do it in 2 steps. So here's some practice questions. Press pause and have a go. Here are the answers. Mark your work. And if you would like a full worksheet on this, I've linked it down in the comments below. And if you found this video useful, I've got loads of content like this over on my channel. Do check it out.